to myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not true. And it feels alright when they come and say to you.
Good morning, welcome along to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. Tuesday brings Ross Gregory. Good morning, Ross.
Morning, Steve. Morning, everyone.
Good to see you, mate. And as always, plenty to talk about in the world of Newcastle United and the defeat, Ross, to start this week for us. A rare defeat and a comprehensive defeat at the hands of Aston Villa, who we were all hoping we would get 3 points against, but ultimately didn't. Bit of a wake-up call. A couple of things which came out of the fans' forum last night was, Eddie Howe now has an easier job at the weekend picking the team because nobody's got a right to start, I would say, at the weekend. And I chucked a suggestion in, maybe Eddie Howe might have done the wrong thing in playing Anthony Gordon on the weekend because of, that little spat that they had at the weekend, although it was all cleared up and it was all handshakes and he was in the team photo at the end, etc. I just wonder sometimes, you've managed on a Sunday, you're a chairman of Wickham now, sometimes doing that kind of thing can have a negative effect in the dressing room when somebody sees a sign of petulance from a player towards the gaffer, and then they start the following week, it sometimes sent out the wrong message. That was my suggestion. It's not based on anything I've heard or anything like that. That was just me chucking that in there. But overall, give us your assessment of the game, Ross. What you thought of it?
Yeah, so kind of full disclosure from the start, I didn't watch the full game. I haven't seen it. I've seen extended highlights, but I haven't seen the full game. But I think from everything that I saw and did see and heard and kind of followed on social media as the game was going on, it was clearly a below par performance. And I think, if I'm being brutally honest, while it was disappointing in the kind of the nature of the defeat was really disappointing, and the performance levels were probably the worst that they've been this season. If I'm being brutally honest, I think it's been coming, Steve. I think that type of performance has probably been on the cards for a little while. I don't think they played very well against Brentford. Certainly not first half. I had a kind of purple spell for 20, 25, 30 minutes in the second half, and then I'm not saying they were hanging on at the end, but Brentford came back a little bit stronger towards the end of that game. I don't think, for all it was a really comfortable 5-1 win against West Ham, I don't think Newcastle played well against West Ham either. I thought I'm maybe picking a little bit, to say that they won 5-1 and didn't play well. It's a sign of a good side. I just thought that in possession, Newcastle were really, really sloppy. I thought they were really sloppy at times against West Ham, and against a better team who didn't gift so many ridiculous goals away. Then it could have been a different story on that game. Like I say, maybe I'm being slightly overcritical and slightly negative, but that's just how I saw it. So I wasn't massively surprised by the Villa result. Maybe it's a bit more by the performance, I suppose, over a full 90 minutes. But you've got to remember as well that Unai Emery is a fantastic coach. There's a reason why Newcastle were interested in bringing him to the club at one point, and he's got Villa absolutely flying. He's got them right bang on the coattails of the teams chasing European places now. They're only 6 points behind Newcastle, albeit they played a game more, but they're in a real rich vein of form. He's a very, very accomplished coach, manager. You don't win the trophies and the titles and stuff that Unai Emery's won without having something about you. So they were fantastic. Newcastle were really, really poor, and I think all you can do now is as a manager, if Eddie Howe, and for the players, is just try to forget about that. Not necessarily forget about some of the aspects of it in terms of where the performance can be improved, but that's gone now. It's a huge game ahead on Sunday. You've got to just try to put that to the back of your mind and start again and focus and say, look, that's a blip. That's one game. yeah, the season so far has been fantastic. Newcastle still in 4th position, still in the box seat in terms of going for the Champions League finish. Got a little bit of luck with with the other results that went their way, particularly obviously Spurs getting beat off Bournemouth. So look, forget about it and go ahead for Sunday. In terms of the team selection and everything else like that, then my understanding is Sean Longstaff had been ill during the week, and that's one of the reasons why he didn't start. What it does illustrate, though, I think, is while Sean Longstaff has his critics, what he contributes to the team in terms of the shape, the dynamic, the way that Newcastle play, the intensity, the protection that he gives Kieran Trippier, the way he kind of integrates with Bruno and with the wide forward, whoever that is, whether that's Miguel Almirón or Jacob Murphy or Anthony Gordon or whoever it is very, very important to Newcastle's structure, to Newcastle's shape, to the way Newcastle want to play. Now, take him out of the team and the shape just and the bits of that so didn't look as solid. There was a lot of Aston Villa targeted a lot down that flank. Targeted Kieran Trippier and Fabian Schär with Ollie Watkins pulling into some great positions. If Sean Longstaff had played, would he have given a little bit more protection? Maybe. He didn't play. It's kind of by the by now. But I think what it does show is that Newcastle still are a little bit away from having the strength and depth that they need. And when they have an off day, Newcastle have to be at their best most games, I think, to still be pushing for that top 4. I don't think Newcastle can drop their levels to 60, 70, 80% and still get through games like some teams can because of the individual quality. I think Newcastle need to be full throttle pretty much every game to be able to get results against the better teams and the informed teams in that league. And Villa are certainly an informed team in that league. So yeah, look, bad day, really, really bad day. But it's gone now. Let's look forward. Let's for the players, they need to put that behind them and move forward into Spurs, because that's going to be absolutely huge.
Yeah, we'll come to that towards the end of the programme. What's your thoughts on the Gordon situation? Like, hypothetically, you were manager of Newcastle United. You had that situation with Gordon the week before. Would you have picked him?
I would have based it on, truly and honestly, and I'm not sitting on the fence here, I would have based it on what he did in training and the reaction. And I wouldn't certainly hold a little a spat, which was over in 10, 15 seconds. And by all accounts, he apologised pretty much straight after. I wouldn't have held that against him. I'm not saying that I necessarily would have started him, but you've got to take into consideration everything that's happened during the week with Sean Longstaff illness, with Miguel Almirón still coming back to fitness, with Alan St-Maximin being injured. There's a few different things to weigh up. I thought personally, and this is just my personal opinion, I thought it was a storm in a teacup, the Anthony Gordon thing. It was nothing. I wouldn't necessarily, I thought it was probably made. I thought there was too much made of it on social media and elsewhere. I thought it was a storm in a teacup. He was unhappy being taken off. That happens. He's still a young man. He's going to be a bit petulant. I've managed petulant players on a Sunday morning, Steve, as I'm sure you have.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just emotion in games and a little bit of sometimes a little bit of immaturity. So I certainly wouldn't have held it against him. I would have based my team selection on what he'd done in training, what the rest of the team had done in training, what the system and stuff like that was around it. I certainly wouldn't have not started him just because of that. If there was other issues, then maybe you do take into account some of the feelings and views of senior members in the squad as well, what they thought of it. I think you would check in on those as well, but I wouldn't have necessarily held it against them, to be honest.
Yeah, I was thinking back through my managerial times, and I did it once. I think I did it once and never did it again. But yeah, it was interesting. It was just something that I threw out there. So, a lot of people criticise Sean Longstaff, Ross. Was that game at the weekend the perfect example of why he's an important part and parcel of this, and why potentially Newcastle have been looking at Scott McTominay as another player to come into the team? Because unfortunately, the dirty players and the people who do the dirty work in that midfield are equally as important as those who are creative and score goals.
The Scott McTominay point that you've made there, Steve, is absolutely bang on. It's absolutely on the money. I think that is completely where Newcastle are looking at, in terms of being able to have 2 players for every position, or 2 players that can do the same job. Now, Sean Longstaff can do some things that other players can't, and he doesn't have the talents or the abilities that some other players have in certain areas. You've got to have that mix, and if you're taking players out of a team, a successful team, a team that's playing well in a certain way, shape, system, formation, tactics, then the best thing that you can do as a manager is then be able to parachute in somebody who's a complete like-for-like replacement, and it doesn't alter just by taking one player out, it doesn't necessarily alter the shape, alter the team, alter the way that you're playing. So a lot of times that you will find that players don't always get the appreciation that they deserve until they are out of the team, and people then can see actually this is what he was bringing to the team. I've maybe underestimated him, and sometimes players become better players when they're sat on the sidelines, and I think that was probably a case on Saturday. I'm not saying for 1 minute that if Sean Longstaff had played, Newcastle would have won the game, because it wasn't. I'm not saying for 1 minute as well that it was only because of Sean Longstaff that or the changing system. I thought there was a lot of below par performances from what I saw on Saturday. There was a lot of below par performances, and to put it just down to one player's absence would be wrong, and would give excuses to other players, which they shouldn't have, because there was quite clearly some bang average performances. But look, the standards that have been kept and maintained over the course of this season so far, you've got to give them a little bit of leeway, because every now and again there will be a little slip, because that's just human nature. That's just human error, and it's having that consistency across a full season is very, very difficult. Just look at Arsenal over the last couple of weeks. Just look at Liverpool can get tanked off one team and go and tank somebody else. Same with Man United. They can get turned over 7-0 and they're still third in the league. So finding that consistency of performance is difficult at this level over a long kind of 38-40 game season. So but yeah, Sean Longstaff for me is an integral part of the way Newcastle play, the way Eddie Howe wants to play. And I can certainly see, I've said this on this show before, why Scott McTominay is somebody who interests them, because for me, he's a good player. He's a good player. Whether he's a great player, probably not, but he's a very good player in a certain system and a certain way of playing.
That point that Simon makes, when Eddie Howe announced to the world for the first time hours before the Villa game that if we get top 4, he will be buying star players. He told the players, your success for playing will be to lose your jobs. That's quite an interesting take. I mean, he didn't announce it. He was asked in the press conference, about levels, and if you finish in the Champions League position, is the budget going to be different if you finish in the Europa League? But yeah, it's an interesting point. I mean, I guess some players it might affect, but in the grand scheme of things, I doubt that was the reason. That was the reason that we got tonked at the weekend. No,
I don't think so at all. I think if any player wants to perform at the best level that they can, and most players will back their ability, back their be confident about their ability, and giving Eddie Howe a reason to keep them within the setup, to keep them within the squad. So I don't think that would have had any negative effect personally. I think it would have just, if anything, he's just answering a question at a press conference. It would have sharpened and hopefully focused the minds, because Newcastle, you'd have to be really naive and really clueless about football to think that if Newcastle got in the Champions League, that they wouldn't be going after a different caliber of player. That would be extraordinarily naive from any player at Newcastle to think, oh well, we've got in the Champions League, that means that I'm just going to keep my place, and Newcastle aren't going to, the team aren't going to strengthen anywhere. It would be, extraordinarily naive, and I don't think players think like that personally. So I don't think it would have had a negative effect at all.
Any updates on ASM? He's obviously been away. Another press conference question was, did he find it, difficult that, that he went off to France to get fit, and Eddie said he didn't have any issues with it. But any updates? Is he back on Tyneside this week?
I've not heard, Steve, if I'm being honest. But this is something that ASM's done before. He's when he's been injured, he's gone back to France and for treatment. A lot of players do that if they've got certain physios, certain people that they trust with their rehab. But obviously it depends on how serious and how long the period of time that they're going to be out is as well, because clubs and managers will afford players that kind of luxury to go back. Right, you're injured, make sure you're still doing your rehab, but you can have a few days away to see your family or to recuperate in at home, because sometimes you don't get that opportunity as much during the season. So I don't know if he's back on Tyneside. I would have thought he probably would be this week, but he regularly posts on his social media, updates on his fitness and on his recovery. You often see him in the gym or working back towards his fitness. So fingers crossed he can get back sooner rather than later, because it'll be a bonus to have him back fit. I think everybody understands that he's got ongoing kind of fitness issues, and his fitness record, his injury record is being a little bit not the greatest since he arrived at Newcastle. But we all saw when he's fit and flying and in good form what an asset he is to Newcastle, certainly in a push for a top 4 place.
Yeah, I mean, as well, the other thing is as well, you mentioned those other games that we played recently, and you said you thought it was coming. We seem to be starting off games very, very slowly and getting caught out. What do you think that's down to?
I don't know, Steve. It's a good point, because it's obviously happened over the last kind of 2 or 3 weeks. Previously, Newcastle have been really quick out of the traps, though, as well. They've been extraordinarily quick out of the traps, and I can think of games where that first 10 minutes Newcastle have either got themselves a goal or created a couple of chances. Certainly at home they've come out. I think it's more the home games. The start of games has been electric. Fired on by the atmosphere and the crowd. Maybe it's slightly different when they play away from home. Maybe they're told, let's just sit in, be cautious. Try to dampen the crowd down a little bit. Maybe the prep leading into away games needs looked at. I don't know. It's a slight concern, I think, certainly over the last 2 or 3 games, that the start hasn't been great. Even the West Ham game, when Newcastle were 2-0 up inside 15 minutes, and you think, oh, that's a really strong start. Well, it was, but if you go back to the first 5 minutes of that game, I think West Ham hit the post, didn't they, and created a couple of good chances. So yeah, I think we've had 3-4 away games on the bounce now, which has been a really difficult run of away fixtures. If you looked at West Ham, Brentford and Villa and said, look, you'll get 6 out of 9 points, I think I would have taken that. Still in the top 4, knowing that you're going into a home game against inconsistent but talented Spurs squad, still ahead of them in the table, still with your destiny in your own hands. Look, it's been a tricky away run, but back at St James's, hopefully they can start games better and carry that momentum on throughout the full 90 minutes.
Callum Wilson, came out on his podcast the week before, said he was, he's quite angry that he hadn't started against Brentford, I think it was, and from his perspective, I can understand that. Eddie Howe said he could understand as well. He doesn't want players to be happy when they're on the bench. It's all right with hindsight. Would you have started Wilson? Do you think it would have made a difference starting Wilson as ahead of Isak at the weekend? Or
no, I don't think
started the pair of them.
I know that question keeps coming up. Is there a way of fitting them both in? And I'm sure Eddie Howe's looking at that and weighing up whether it's something that he can do. Obviously, they both played together for 45 minutes against Brentford in the second half, with Wilson setting up Isak's eventual winner. Callum Wilson performed really well against West Ham and got himself a couple of goals. I personally think Alexander Isak is in the box seat for that role. If you're just playing the one at the minute, I think his performances over the last 5 or 6, 7 games have justified that inclusion. But Eddie Howe's got a fantastic option there with Callum Wilson if he's fit and firing and hungry and ready to go. And he may decide to make that change against Spurs on the weekend. But yeah, I don't think it would have made any difference personally. I don't think it was one player here or one player there. I think it was an overall collective team performance that was poor, and the fact that Villa were absolutely excellent and are in really good form. I think it was, Newcastle would have needed to be absolutely at their best to cope with Villa on Saturday. But it wasn't just, one or two different positions or places. There was, again, like I say, I didn't see the full game, but in extended highlights and from what I've read, there's probably, 9 or 10 players that 8 or 9 players that didn't do themselves justice, and goes back to what you said at the top of the show, Steve, about, Eddie Howe having a real kind of selection headache in some ways, and nobody justified their selection on Saturday. So yeah, a great option for him to have with Callum Wilson potentially to come off the bench or even to start. Being really interesting to see what the team uses when it drops an hour before kickoff on Sunday.
What's your take on the Dan Burns situation? He's played most games this season. He's been playing, I think a lot of us feel, out of position, although Eddie Howe now says he's a left back. Primarily, we thought he was coming in as a centre-half. Played a lot of games at Brighton as a left back, it has to be said. Do you think it's time maybe for him to have a rest? Because that right-hand side seems to be getting targeted a hell of a lot. And I think that's been almost highlighted as a slight weakness. If you can get at the right-hand side, it affects Newcastle's play. And Howe in the press conference last weekend, admitted that, the reason that he plays that formation is it gives the opportunity for Trippier to push forward, and it means Dan Burn can tuck in and make a 3. And, he went in depth about why he plays that formation. Maybe he's giving it away now a little bit, for those who hadn't looked at the way Newcastle set up and realizing, exactly what they were doing. Is it time maybe for Targett to come back in?
It's a good question, that one, Steve. Really good question. I'm not certain it is. I think, again, Dan Burn has had a tough couple of games. I thought against Man United, against Anthony at home, who give him a real tough game in the cup final at Wembley. I thought he handled them very, very well. Eventually, he had a couple of uncomfortable moments early on. Is he the best out and out left back in Newcastle or in the country? Maybe not. Targett is maybe more comfortable as an attacking left back, someone who can bomb on a little bit more. He's probably played more games there, but Newcastle got the best defensive record in the Premier League. Or I haven't checked the numbers, but it was the best defensive record, prior to Villa. I'm assuming it's pretty much still there. The back four as a whole, I thought were really poor against Villa. They couldn't cope with Ollie Watkins. They couldn't cope with some of the movement from the runners from midfield. They didn't get much support from the midfield in terms of protection. And Dan Burn had another, uncomfortable game, but so did Kieran Trippier. Kieran Trippier was one of the his weaker performances. Fabian Schär up against Watkins, really, really, poor. Botman didn't cover himself in much glory, I didn't think, on Saturday from what I saw. So I understand the Dan Burn question, I do, but I think this is a back four that knows how to play together, knows each other's strengths. Has been very successful and very compact. I would look at, certainly in some of the performances, I would look at the players ahead of them as to whether they're being as solid defensively, or it looked very, very easy to get at Newcastle's back four on Saturday. And while they didn't defend individually particularly well in that kind of personal battles, individual battles. I don't think it was solely down to them. So to answer your question, I would certainly be keeping Dan Burn in the starting 11, certainly for the next few games. I think he's earned it. I think he's deserved it. I think his combination play with the rest of the team is something that is played a huge part in Newcastle's success this season. So I wouldn't be taking him out just yet.
Question there. Time to give Elliott Anderson a chance. He seemed to be coming into Eddie Howe's thinking. He seemed to be, on the fringes. He then got his opportunity. We all know what happened against Liverpool, but since then, he's had another couple of chances. Seemed to be getting into the flow of it, and then seems to be, back to where he started again, which is, not nowhere near starting, which is a bit of a concern. Would you have given him a chance, or would you give him a chance?
Not at the minute. No, I wouldn't. Again, I think we've got to be careful not to overreact to Saturday's defeat. Now, it was a poor defeat. It was a poor performance, like we've said. But and there was a couple of signs in previous games, I thought, where we didn't play well in the first half against Brentford, didn't start sloppy against West Ham, etc., etc. But look, this is a team which is fourth in the table. I don't think making too many changes and bringing players in and out, throwing the baby out with the bathwater is not the response I think is needed to this Villa defeat. I think it's a time for stability. I think it's a time for cool heads. I think who would you bring Elliott Anderson in for? Would you drop Joe Linton? Would you drop Joe Willock? Would you play him as a left-sided forward ahead of Miggy Almirón if he's fit, ahead of Wilson and Isak if you want to play them together, ahead of Gordon, ahead of Murphy? I understand the clamour for Elliott Anderson, and I do think he's been slightly unfortunate, but he's been a victim of Newcastle's consistency and performances. It was only a couple of games ago we were talking about how superb Joe Willock was, and he should be pushing in potentially for the England squad. We all know what Joe Linton brings to that midfield or that forward line. If he plays as the third forward, Miggy Almirón back fit again, top scorer. Anthony Gordon hasn't quite hit his straps yet, but Sean Longstaff come back in. There's a lot of competition for places there, and I don't think at the minute Elliott Anderson is ready to start certainly big games like that against Spurs, and I don't think the players that he would potentially be replacing deserve to be dropped ahead of Elliott Anderson instead of Elliott Anderson. So again, that's my personal opinion. Other people will disagree and think he should be starting, but that's how I view it from a kind of collective and a team perspective.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Is Targett not regarded as good enough, says Simon? I mean, it would appear so, wouldn't it? I mean, he didn't put a foot wrong, but Eddie Howe's not going to say he's not good enough, but he seems to have hit a brick wall like he did at Villa. Yeah,
I think it's an interesting point. I've never been 100% convinced that Eddie Howe was 100% convinced in Matt Targett. I know he brought him in on loan at the last season, and then signed him in the summer for one of the first signings that he made. But there's always been a little bit of talk around the left back position. There was a little bit of talk around the left back position before they made the Matt Targett deal permanent. I've never been convinced that Eddie Howe's 100% convinced that in Matt Targett. That's not to say that he doesn't like him. I just think he prefers playing Dan Burn ahead of him, and that's fine. That's the way it goes. Newcastle got a lot of options at left back, with Burn and Targett and potentially Paul Dummett or Jamal Lewis. There's a lot of players who can play at left back. Dan Burn's the one in possession. Matt Targett's still got a bit of a way to go, I think, before he ousts him and probably gets that full backing and belief from his manager.
Okay, it's very much a case of wait and see. Tom Dixon says, Ross, with the 9 clubs in risk of relegation, who would you like to sign? I mean, it's a lot of way to go, even though there's only 9-10 games left for most teams now. There are players, I guess, you would like to take, and it leads us nicely into an article which I highlighted and stuck in the chat earlier, which links to the Chronicle, of course, which is 8 players that Newcastle United ideal transfer candidates Newcastle United should be looking at to sign this summer. And article was done by Andrew Reynolds. I'll run you through the names as well. Some of them will be quite familiar to Newcastle fans who watch NUFC Matters. James Maddison, João Palhinha, Kieran Tierney, Moses Caicedo, João Pedro, Amadou Onana, Marcus Thuram, Mohamed Salisu, and that's the end of the list. So any of those players, Maddison, of course, would be potentially a signing who I'd like to see here, and could come from a team that's relegated. I mean, Leicester certainly in the mix. I guess another one I'd add to that is James Ward-Prowse, who I would most certainly think will end up in the Championship with Southampton. There are other players. What's your thoughts, and what's your thoughts on that list in the Evening Chronicle?
Yeah, so I think the relegation running is really tight, isn't it? It's and picking the 3 that are going to go down is nigh on impossible at the minute. I think Southampton probably look nailed on as much as anybody else, and if they do go down, then Ward-Prowse will certainly stay in the Premier League, and I can imagine a lot of clubs being interested in him. I'm not 100% certain if I think he's a great player, by the way. I'm just not 100% certain he'd be the type that Newcastle will go for in the summer. But I would, I think he's a real talent, and he scores goals. His set piece delivery's excellent, and he can get himself on the ball and pass and play. But I'm not sure if he's the type of player Eddie Howe would necessarily want in. If Leicester go down, then I think Maddison will be away anyhow, whether they stay up or not. And they're the types of players, the Maddisons and I suppose the Ward-Prowses as well to an extent. But Newcastle are going to look for top end players this summer. I think, especially if they get in the Champions League. But regardless of that, I think they want to. We've talked about it before with Eddie Howe's comments. To improve that squad, they're going to need to go for top end players, real high quality internationals or players with the potential to turn themselves into internationals over the next couple of years. There's no point just going in and buying. I think gone are the days where Newcastle might look at a relegated club and go, oh, well, we can grab this player or that player. They've got to look at players who will improve their squad. And in targeting 3 or 4 really top draw players, Maddison is an obvious target. Harvey Barnes at Leicester might be another one that they look at bringing in. Certainly, there's been a bit of talk around him. I think that they'll be looking at a real different level of player in the summer. In terms of that, the list, there's a load of players that I think Newcastle could look at. Caicedo at Spurs sorry, not at Spurs. At Brighton is a quality player. Even big in the summer, and there'll be interested in him. And Newcastle do need a solid kind of number 6 centre midfielder who can dictate play and get on the ball, and that's going to be a key area, whether it's somebody like him or Calvin Phillips or the lad at Wolves whose name escapes us at the minute. Those types of players. Onana at Everton, decent, but I don't know too much about him, to be honest. João Pedro, there's an obvious link with Watford there because Newcastle have tried to sign him in the past. So, look, Newcastle are going to be linked with dozens and dozens of players over the summer, as we well know. They want to look at I think they'll look to bring in a right-sided centre-half, possibly a left-back, centre midfielder, and then an attacking player as well. So I think they'll look to bring in kind of 4, maybe 5 players, but I think they'll be looking at real top end players who will improve that team and be able to play in the Champions League should Newcastle get there.
Okay, Ross, you might want to jump onto your hotspot. I'm going to do the ads now. Your internet's starting to falter a little bit. We'll be back after this.
A big thanks to all our sponsors. Skips and Bins, telephone 0800 25 45 25 3, email inquiries at skipsandbins.com, website skipsandbins.com, easy contract free and pay as you go waste collection. Thanks also to Mr. Vicky's, handmade in Cumbria. These sauces are really hot stuff. You can order them by emailing info@mrvickys.co.uk or by telephoning 01768 210 102. Thanks to Neil and the guys at Media Arts for all the help with the video side of things. And thanks to qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend, Newcastle, and the guys who run our website, nufcmatters.com. If you want to subscribe to the show, hit the subscribe button tonight. It is free. Hit the thumb up under the video to like the video and click share to share to your other social media. If you want to join the channel, hit join. There's 3 different tiers. Pick the one that suits you and help support the channel financially. If you want to pay a one-off membership fee of £25 and get these goodies, a scarf, a pen, a cup, and entry into the monthly draw, then go to NUFC Matters and look for membership pack. Failing that, get your smartphone and put it over the QR code and it will take you straight there. We're also a podcast and you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, Podbean, and other podcast providers. Usually goes up 24 hours after the show has finished. We also support the food bank on this channel. If you want to make a virtual donation today at the Matchday Bucket, go to nufcfansfoodbank.co.uk and you can make a deposit today. Don't forget to enter the Shearer raffle. There's 150 tickets, £1 per ticket, and you can win a limited edition signed Alan Shearer ball. Enter now at nufcmatters.com. If you have a look on our website, we've also got a vast range of mugs, t-shirts, cups, and whatever else takes your fancy. The Isaac t-shirt is proven popular this month, $16.99 plus delivery from nufcmatters.com. Don't forget as well, we do a range of events over the course of the year. We have Peter Beardsley, an up-close and personal evening at the Tynemouth Surf Cafe. Limited tickets remain, 25th of April. Get them now from Surf Cafe, tynemouth.co.uk or from ticketweb.uk. There's also an evening with Peter Beardsley on May the 19th at the Tyneside Irish Centre, and you can get tickets from newcastlelegends.com, and tickets are £50. Don't forget our end of season do takes place 27th of May, 7 o'clock at the Tyneside Irish Centre. Tickets for that one are a tenner. NUFCmatters.com is where you can get your tickets for that. In June, Thursday the 1st of June to be precise, Rob Lee will be at Louis Liquor Store in the Big Market in Newcastle, and tickets for that are available direct from the venue. And an evening with Rob Lee, Lee Clark and John Beresford takes place the next evening on Friday the 2nd of June at the Grand Hotel in Gosforth. This is a charity event and tables are of £10, £700, and you can book them by contacting Natalie at heelandtour.org.uk or visiting their website. In July, Gavin Peacock is in Newcastle on July the 10th at the Tyneside Irish Centre. Tickets for that are available from nufcmatters.com. And he also takes an evening with at the Surf Cafe in Tynemouth on the 11th of July. So get your tickets direct from the venue for that one as well. And if you're a boxing fan, the Night of Champions, Ricky Hatton, Frank Bruno, Nigel Benn and Joe Calzaghe takes place at the Fed. And that will be taking place on the 16th of June. More dates to be added. Tickets from all those events, www.goldstarpromotions.co.uk.
Yeah, Neves was the player that you were thinking of, Ross, at Wolves.
Neves, yeah.
Roger. The league is very tight, Tom. As for top 4 threats, I agree. Brighton are a worry. Yeah, they're certainly a team in form. It shows how important getting a result on Sunday is now against Tottenham, which again is very, very true. Yeah, it's top of the top and tough at the bottom. David John Cook says, did you see the Telegraph article by Luke Edwards saying our budget for the summer has changed from the planned 20 million and listed a set of players that will be 10 times that amount as targets. I mean, I've got to be honest, I don't tend to read a great deal on transfers at all, as you know, Ross. Surely the budget wouldn't be 20 million, Ross.
I can't see the budget being 20 million. No, I mean, that wouldn't get you. That wouldn't get you, someone's right leg these days. Never mind a full player.
Let's say that might be a typo on behalf of David, or it might be a typo on behalf of Luke. Either way, it'll not be 20 million. I
would have thought 200 million. I would have thought that might be closer to the mark this summer. Obviously, a lot depends on some of the financial situations and that Newcastle have when it comes to the commercial deals, as we've talked about so often, and how it feeds into FFP, the sponsorship, the kit deals, so much that is needed behind the scenes to generate more revenue, which can then be fed back into Eddie Howe's kind of transfer war chest, to use a phrase.
Good old journalistic phrase that. Alan Oliver, copyright.
We love a war chest. We love a war chest.
War cry, war chest.
War chest. Or kitty, transfer kitty.
Kitty, yeah.
So yeah, I think it'll be a big budget. I think it'll be pushing 200 million that they'll look to spend on, like I've said before, 4, maybe 5 players. Around top quality players, where you're looking at it paying 50, 60 million for players. That's the kind of market Newcastle are probably going to have to punch in these days, as it's shown by the money that they spent on Anthony Gordon, on Alexander Isak, on Bruno, on Sven Botman. That they're the types of numbers that Newcastle will be looking at these days. That doesn't mean that they're not going to be looking for the odd bargain, the odd player that they may be able to get for a 10, 15 million pound mark. Interestingly, I forgot about the lad at Southampton, the centre half, Mohamed Salisu, who is somebody who Newcastle are interested in. He's more of a left-sided centre half, but he's potentially available for a little bit less money in the summer. So they will look to bring in the odd bargain if you like. But yeah, I would have thought it'd be a huge war chest, kitty, budget, whatever you want to call it, in the summer of certainly more than 20 million, more like 200.
Yeah, 20 million, that's an Ashley budget, says Alan. Lucky to get 20 million with Ashley, says Darren. Oh, yes, the good old days. You couldn't sign Steve Wraith for 20 million, says Ian. Thanks, Ian. You obviously saw us play. Tom Dixon says, question for Ross. What's your thoughts on VAR with incorrect decisions? I mean, we've discussed this till we're sick in the back teeth, I guess. But it's never ending, isn't it? Every week now, every week we're just seeing something crazy.
What I think VAR has done is it's actually made us talk more about refereeing decisions, more about these sort of things, because previously you just accepted it as human error, or it's the referee that was that offside. No, how's he missed that? And then you would kind of move on, or it's just made it so much more high profile, because decisions that people just don't understand VAR. They don't understand the inconsistency of it. I think people understand the inconsistency when it comes to, that's what one referee deems as a foul as opposed to someone else. But it's just been highlighted so much more. And when you've got a system that is supposed to eradicate decisions, but you've still got people in charge making those decisions who are making mistakes, that it just compounds it even more. So it frustrates the life out of me, VAR. I wish we could go back to not having it. And that's not me trying to say things were always better in previous times, but I just don't think that it's, for what it's brought in, I don't think the pros outweigh the cons at the minute. The lack of celebration that you have in goals, sometimes everybody's, you half celebrate goals sometimes these days, rather than fully kind of getting on board with it. You're always thinking, you're always almost sometimes afraid to let yourself go too much, because you think, well, that's going to, the ref's going to rule this one out, or it's going to get checked, and it takes 4 or 5 minutes out of a game. Absolutely can't stand VAR. Really can't. Have my feelings come through loud and clear there, Steve, on that one?
Yeah, sick to the back teeth. That's what I was thinking of saying. Yes, but I have, Ross. Despite our poor performance at Villa, we still got nothing off the ref. We keep saying it's not VAR, it's the officials that are using it, which is true. Ian. Bizarre comment from Shaka Hislop. Newcastle United will sell Bruno this summer if a big bid comes in. Hislop says that if a bid of around 100 million came in, then Newcastle would sell. What's your thoughts on that, Ross? That's breaking news.
I don't think they'll sell him this summer. I've said this before with the Bruno situation. Though I think Newcastle have to match Bruno's ambitions. That would be the key to keeping him. He's a fantastic player. I don't think his performance levels have been quite as high as what they should have been recently, or what they have been recently. But he's a fantastic player who can play in the Champions League and will, footballers have a short career, and for all that, we demand and hope for loyalty from players, and you get it. And someone like Bruno is clearly connected now to the club and loves it up here, and is really bought into Newcastle as a city and the fan base and everything else like that. If he's not playing in Champions League football in a couple of years' time, then and he gets offers to play at that level. He gets offers from clubs who can do that. His ambitions, in my opinion, will probably be to move in there. So Newcastle need to match his ambitions by playing at the best level that they can and giving him that platform to showcase his skills and abilities. So no, I don't see him moving this summer, certainly not. But look, you never say never further down the line.
Miguel Almirón was a welcome addition on the bench at the weekend. Made a quicker than expected recovery. How important is he going to be in the running?
Yeah, I think he's going to be huge, Steve. I think it just gives Newcastle that extra little dynamic, that added dynamic in the wide areas. I thought that his performance had dipped a little bit before his injury, and he got put on the bench for a game or two, and Jacob Murphy came in, which I thought was fair. I thought was really fair. But if Almirón can get back to the form and the sharpness that he showed before the winter break, the World Cup, then he's going to be a huge asset. I think even in glimpses on Saturday when he came on, he had a couple of kind of half chances. He gets himself into some good positions, and he's linked up with Kieran Trippier's and Sean Longstaff on that right hand side and Bruno is very, very important. So great news that he's getting back. We can't have enough players fit just to give extra options for Eddie Howe. If a game's not going according to plan, he can change it off the bench by bringing on your Miguel Almiróns or your Callum Wilsons or whoever, or Anthony Gordons or whoever's on the bench. You need a strong squad, so it'd be very, very important. Hopefully you can keep yourself fit between now and the end of the season.
Harrison Ashby featured in the 4-3 win against Norwich for the under-21s, as did the guy who has been pushed out of the squad, Ryan Fraser, who was, in words of NUFC.com, a continual threat down the United left, although he's got no chance of ever playing for Newcastle's first team again, as long as Eddie Howe's in charge. But Harrison Ashby marked his debut. He converted a low shot from the right side of the box and also came up with an assist. So, a good debut for the youngster after a little bit of injury issues.
Yeah, great to see him back fit and playing. I'm sure he's delighted to be to finally be appearing in a black and white strip. So he kind of came in a little bit under the radar in January, but he's somebody that Newcastle tried to sign before January, tried to sign last summer. So that obviously somebody that they've got a lot of faith and belief in. And he's still a young player, and he's got a lot of work to do to get into that starting 11 in the first team ahead of someone like Kieran Trippier. But I think Newcastle see him as being a player that they can develop over the next season or so, and have him in and around that first team now that he's back fit.
Okay, Maxi leaving in the summer, according to reports I've read. That's again the start of summer speculation, Simon. We'll leave that one for the summer when we are speculating. Les says agree. He's just talking about something in the comments. With regards to the VAR, we need live ref communication. Yes, Simon. Technology's there to do that. I completely agree, mate. I think it's a great idea. There was a positive over the weekend, other than the 21s winning, and that was the women's team. A 6-1 win over Bradford City on Sunday in front of a crowd of 24,092. Maintained the hopes of winning the National League Division 1 North. Going great guns, the women, and really giving it their best shot. So third time they've played at St James's Park, 100% record there. The goal scorers were Beth Guy with a brace, Charlotte Potts with a brace, Georgia Gibson and Rachel Lee, who wrapped up the points. So that's a big result for the ladies team, and it looks very positive for them, doesn't it?
It does. It's great to see that they're continuing to progress. Great to see so many people at St James's Park supporting them and backing them, and we've called for as a group, as a fan base, we want to see a kind of a Newcastle as a community club that develops wider links with the community and not just focuses in on the first team, whether that's through the academy or through the women's football. That's great to see. Delighted for someone like Charlotte Potts who got 2 goals after helping run our Easter holiday camp at Wickham during the week. So maybe some of the young players at Wickham's Easter camp helped inspire her to a couple of goals. But no, it's great to see them pushing on, and we'd like to see them get promoted and continue their development. I think Newcastle will continue to focus in really, really strongly on the women's team and back them and help them try to get up through the league and up into the WSL eventually. But obviously a little bit of way to go, but really strong signs and encouraging to see.
Yeah, we've also had the confirmation that Newcastle's St James's Park made the cut for the 2028 European Championship finals. We're in there with Wembley, Hampden Park, Dublin Arena, National Stadium of Wales, Spurs' ground, City of Manchester Stadium, Everton, Villa Park and Casement Park, which is in Belfast. So Old Trafford, Croke Park, London Stadium, which is of course West Ham, and the Stadium of Light have all been elbowed. So Newcastle still in. Anfield wasn't under consideration. Their pitch dimensions don't comply with UEFA guidelines. And of course, Newcastle have got form in the Euros. We had hosted 3 games, I think it was, in Euro 96.
Yeah, I think it's great for the club. I think obviously first and foremost, the England and Ireland need to win the bid for Euros first, and then and hopefully that happens and we get to see some more top class football at St James's Park, international football at St James's Park. We've seen it, like you say, in Euro 96. We've seen England games being hosted at St James's Park in the past when Wembley was being renovated. We had the Olympics in 2012 as well. Some top players playing at St James's, and it just opens it up to it's sometimes a different fan base as well. Get to see different players, different games than what you would normally see, different teams. So I think it's fantastic. What I would say on top of that as well, though, is I think should the bid be successful for bringing the Euros, and Newcastle are going to host some games, the stadium will need some real work on it still. It will need to be not just a bit of a tartan up, but there's some areas which we all know the board, the owners at Newcastle have talked about recently as well, in terms of some of the facilities and some of the improvements that they want to bring in. Hopefully this focuses the mind and sharpens it even more so, because at times in some areas the stadium looks a little bit tired and a little bit tatty, and it's been neglected under the Mike Ashley era, as we all know, and the current owners are very keen to improve the look of the stadium and the feel of the stadium. So all positive signs, though, Steve.
Yeah, since we last spoke as well, Newcastle have announced that they're taking part in the summer series of friendly fixtures in America. Aston Villa, we take them on in Philadelphia on the 23rd. Chelsea on the 26th in Atlanta. And on the 28th, we play Brighton. Are you a fan of these pre-season type of competitions where we're playing against teams that we're going to play in the league?
No, I'm not. I'm really not. I think you come up against these teams enough throughout the season, and I know why they've done it. It's part of the Premier League branding, and it's increasing the potential commercial reach and everything else like that in America. But I would have preferred to have played against top Spanish or top Italian or top European teams rather than against teams that you're going to be playing against week in, week out once the season starts. That's just my personal opinion, and but yeah, I'm not necessarily a fan.
Yeah, me neither. I've got to be honest. I'm pleased for the lads out there. I mean, Kevin Chilvers, who's a regular on the panel and on the show during the week, is in Atlanta. James Moore, one of our regulars in the chat. You'll all get a chance to see Newcastle, so I'm pleased for them. But yeah, I'm of the same mindset as you. Okay, Newcastle take on Spurs this coming Sunday, 2:00 kickoff live on Sky Sports. It's a sellout. Fancy that. Gibbo and Super Mac will be at the Dog and Parrot this week at midday, and they will be returning at 4:45. No news on the referee or VAR. A little bit early. I think we're all hoping that Miggy will be fully fit this weekend, and that ASM will have returned from France and will be available for selection. Other than that, not many injury problems you would hope for Newcastle United. Spurs coming to St James's Park in a little bit of disarray with the departure of the manager and not great results in recent weeks, but they do have a little bit of a jinx over Newcastle at St James's Park. We'll cover more of that as we develop into the week. So Ross, your views, your predictions for the weekend, please.
Look, it's a massive game, isn't it, Steve? It's absolutely huge. You couldn't kind of want to, in some ways, a better or bigger game to come back from a disappointing result against Villa. Spurs, for me, are there for the taking, though. I think they might look at Newcastle and say similar. To be fair, they might look at Newcastle and say they were terrible against Villa and bang average and for long spells against Brentford and so on and so forth. They might be looking at it and thinking the same. But there's no doubt that it's not the most it's not the happiest of camps at Spurs. That there's a lot of issues that are going on around the club and behind the scenes. They don't have a permanent manager. They've got fans getting on the back and booing certain players. They've got players out of form, and there's a lot of issues that are surrounding the club. So I think it's a really, really good opportunity for Newcastle to put a little bit more distance between them and Spurs in the hunt for fourth place, especially with Newcastle being at home, especially with it being at St James's Park. If they can get that atmosphere flying, electric, noisy, passionate, as we know that it has been over recent games, and get that same atmosphere going. There's a lot on the fan. The fans can play a huge part on Sunday, I think, and the team can feed off that, certainly in that first kind of 10-15 minutes, and make the fast start that we've been talking about there earlier, which they haven't been doing away from home. Get them fast starts, get Spurs on the back foot, then it could be a really, really good game. Really big opportunity, I think, for Newcastle. Hopefully there's no injuries and no illnesses and everything else like that. And Eddie Howe's got a relatively big squad to pick from. I'm quite confident though, Steve. I think it'll be a Newcastle win. I don't know by what, but I think it's a huge opportunity to really push Spurs out of the run and out of the reckoning for that fourth place.
Okay, prediction?
I'll go for 2-0 Newcastle. Although, I mean, having said that, Harry Kane always seems to do well against Newcastle, always seems to score. But if we can keep Harry Kane quiet, who as I've said on this show many times before, I'm a massive fan of him. But I'll be ultra positive and I'll go 2-0.
Okay, great stuff. As always, Ross, great to have you on. I'm back tomorrow with George Mitchell. Those were the days, 6 o'clock pre-record. Thursday, 6 o'clock with Super Mac, and 5 o'clock with Three Amigos on Friday night. Okay, cheers, Ross. Take care, mate.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, everyone.